All right, let's talk about Christian rock and metal. Stick around. All right, so the in my previous video, I was talking about buying stuff on Discogs. When you go through and you're looking for one thing, and then you look at what else they got, and you happen to run across some things. So that's what happened with one of the ones that I mentioned in my last video. Um, Along with that, the guy had some other things I wanted, so I went ahead and grabbed them. Let's see. And then, well, okay, I'm going to do this first. So I picked up Jerusalem, Dancing on the Head of the Serpent. This is the original Refuge release. This is, I love all the Jerusalem albums, but this one still stands out as probably one of my favorites. It's got all the hooks. It's got, it's just so, I don't know. It's hard to describe. So you got their stuff starts in the 70s, and they got a kind of a more classic-y rock. They're from Sweden, so you got that kind of an accent, and their stuff is kind of classic rock, and I love that stuff. But then when they hit this album, now the Warrior album, which came out before this, is probably it's probably my second favorite because I really have fallen in love with this over the decades. Anyway, when I saw this, I still need a lot of Jerusalem on vinyl. I've got everything on CD. But when I saw this, I thought I'm going to grab this. It's on vinyl. It was in a good price. So, it's just good, solid 80s sounding hard rock. Got some keyboards and everything. But I think it's probably one of their strongest releases, period. Now, the thing that I went in for this one particular album, I forget why. Maybe I was looking and saw this as something else he had, but I want to talk a little bit about Leviticus. Now, this is their first album, I Shall Conquer. I say first album, it's their first major album. They had some albums, another Swedish band. They had some albums in their native tongue that were like EPs back in the day, and then this was like their first English album sung with English lyrics. It was released over there first, and then this is the American pressing. Now, real brief story. I'll try to keep it brief. So I've told sort of the story before, but in the 80s, 85 is when I kind of decided that I wanted to really buckle down. I was brought up in the church, and I always was, a goody two-shoes, never really got into much trouble. As a good kid through, decent grades through teenage years. Got in the military, and around 1985 decided that I wanted to become more serious about my walk with the Lord. So at that point, one of the things that I thought was kind of a vice was that I listened to a lot of just regular, worldly heavy metal. It was actually at the point where I started to kind of get into Slayer with Hell Awaits when it came out. I kind of was like, okay, if I'm starting to like this stuff, which has been labeled, this is like the really evil type bands, I'm probably not in a place in life that I should be. So I know, don't cry. I kind of cry now because I kind of wish I still had. But so I made a decision to just scrap it all and start over. And I tossed all of my records. I had hundreds and hundreds of records. Just tossed them, Say a little quiet moment for that. Okay, anyway, and started over. Now, at the time, I wanted to get into more Christian music. At the time, the only Christian album I had in my collection was Striper, Yellow, and Black Attack, their first EP. This might have been probably right around the time of Soldiers Under Command, so I probably had that too. And I probably had some of the singles that came out around that time. I had seen this album in the local record store, in the independent indie releases, import releases. That's what it was. And I did notice, I didn't know anything about them, but the band, Leviticus, Book of the Bible. And then there is a little write-up about them here. Anyway, I knew it was a Christian band. Knew nothing about them, but I guess because at that point, having hooked up with Striper, I was kind of on the lookout for bands that were like that, Christian bands. It wasn't until I finally trashed everything, and then I went out and said, I need to go out and buy whatever I can buy that's like Christian music. And I bought this, and a couple other albums, like the first Saint album, the first Messiah Prophet album, some Barnabas albums, whatever was available at that point. This was one of the first ones I got. Now I don't know. Don't know why I didn't have this. I had this on vinyl. I never sold it. Back when I sold all my records in like the 90s, when vinyl was going out and CDs were coming in, I sold all of my Christian vinyl except the ones that I didn't have on CD, which would have been this and their other releases. But somewhere over the years, while I still kept a handful of vinyl, for some reason this one ended up missing. So I did have to replace it. Found a copy, grabbed this. Now the first two, Leviticus, had a different singer, and some people don't really like it. He's got a low voice. I always loved it. I got this album. I fell in love with it. Second album came out. Now this one is the one that I originally owned in the 80s. It was kind of funny. I was going to write my roommate from back in the military days. His now wife, then girlfriend, worked at the Christian bookstore. And so she would always come over because, of course, they were dating. We lived in the dorms together in the military. And I remember calling her one day and saying, hey, she called me, I think, and said, hey, they got a new album in by Leviticus. Isn't that the band you like? And I'm like, yeah, I got their first album. And I'm like, can you bring it to me? And so she bought it and brought it home from work, gave it to me. This is the one. Anyway, this took it up another level. Same singer. So some people kind of aren't into the vocal stylings. I'm sorry. This is amazing stuff. I love the first two Leviticus albums. They are different, but they're just primo. I just love them. Just, lower register singing. So this is the original. I already had this. I'm just kind of showing the collection here. I bought this a while back as from somebody when I first started buying vinyl 2 years ago or so. They changed singers. This became a whole different sound, very much more melodic, soaring vocals, the new bass player, because the other one was a singer bass player. Now they got a singer and a bass player. My wife's favorite album, she actually pulled this out so it could teach me how to use your record player, and I showed her, and she put this on and cranked it and did housework. Still her favorite album to this day from the 80s. I bought this as soon as I could find a copy of it back when I was first buying records and before people started really charging a lot. This is just amazing. I would encourage people to check this out first if you're not into the older style. So what I got the other day, and I got this from, I think, Gerda Music. I was on the lookout for this because it's the only one I didn't have on vinyl aside from the first album. Since I bought the first album, I said, now I need to find their last album that I needed on record, a record version of Knights of Heaven. And lo and behold, happened to find one on Gerda for probably more than I would have liked to have paid, but not much different than what I have paid for like the limited run vinyl. Actually cheaper than some of that. So I thought it's worth it to get it. It's sealed. I haven't even opened it yet. I want to make the video first, but I'm seeing this online selling for even more than I paid for it. So I'm tempted, but no, it's getting harder and harder to find. I don't know. I think I'm probably gonna definitely open it. Anyway, so this completed the collection. So I got two of the last Leviticus records. Now I could go back and try to get the two original ones that were sung, in Swedish. I have digital tracks of those because they were released on CD, but I don't know. So Leviticus, briefly, that's really about it. The CDs, pretty much the same. This is like my original. No, that's a reissue. I do have two copies of this. Again, one of my favorite albums. I could probably get rid of this. The reason that I kept this is one of them is the original solid rock import on Royal Music that came out. This is the one I bought as an import when it came out. It did later come out in America on Pure Metal Records. I bought this a couple years ago just because I'm like, hey, two different ones. I don't know. I don't need to collect these. Get rid of that. And then, of course, Knights of Heaven. This is the original one. Also bought as an import on the Royal Music. And then they released, they got together in like the early 2000s and did a live at Bob Fest. And it's like, this was a different singer too. This Knights of Heaven was a different singer than that third album. So they've got three different singers in there. Anyway, got back together and did this. And then, of course, a couple years ago, they released this box set in his service. And what it is, it's a 35 year anniversary reissue. And what it is it's got these It's got a booklet that's got all kinds of good information, and then they're in little sleeves. It's not super high done. The thing that I didn't like as much about it is look at the sleeves. They're kind of faded. They're not really crisp and clear. The back of them is really generic. The book is really cool. It's got all of the albums, Live at Bobfest and everything. Anyway, so that's Leviticus. I was glad to finally get the 2 missing Leviticus vinyls, and I have those now. So was really excited to get that. Anyway, that is all that I got. But I wanted to share that separately because I wanted to highlight Leviticus a little. Some people don't know who they are. They haven't been doing a whole lot recently. But check them out. You can see them online, and you can get the box set and some other things. So anyway, thanks a lot. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared.